So one of the beautiful things of the Buddha's path to awakening is that we can always start afresh. So we begin, when we first come across the path, like I was saying about how it was for me at the beginning, which was a lot of struggle and a lot of unwholesome tendencies that needed to be transformed, let's put it that way. And if we believe that what we find in our mind and our heart is what we are, we're kind of stuck. Then we're just stuck with it. But once there's an understanding, it's the first fold of the Eightfold Path to have right view. Once we have that understanding that it's not who and what we are, but it's an accumulation of tendencies. And they might be wholesome, they might be unwholesome. For most of us, it's a bit of a mix of wholesome and unwholesome. But it's an accumulation of tendencies. It's not who we are, and we tend to believe our thoughts, and believe our feelings, and our mind states and moods, and they all feel very real, and they feel like who and what we are, and that gets complicated. That gets complicated because thoughts change all the time, and they're somewhat conditioned. And feelings, they're so transient. But when a feeling arises, if a painful feeling arises, it can be so strong we can't bear it, Or a pleasant feeling, we just can't stop ourselves from following it. And then where that leads us can get really complicated. And a mood, so a mind state. This is important to know. So I suffered from depression a lot in my early years, like from about 12 to 30 something, on and off. And when you're depressed, when the mind is depressed, it really feels like this is everything. This is real. It's always been like this. It's always going to be like this. And that's what that mood tells. That's the message of that mind state. But actually, what happens is it comes. It's there for a while. It pulls everything down, makes everything really hard, and then it lifts and it moves on. And then it comes back and I don't have it anymore, which is a lovely freedom. But that's a mood of the mind. And so when it descends, it feels like absolutely real, and it feels like it's always been like this and it's always going to be like this. So but that's not true. So to know and it feels like this is who I am, but it's not who one is. It's a mood of the mind. And likewise with bright states, we can, through our practice, we can have sometimes very beautiful, bright states of mind, which is very wholesome. But if, they're just to be known and experienced, they're not to be grasped. So we can easily think, now I've had this really great experience, now I'm really special, I'm the best meditator of anyone I know, or maybe I'm enlightened, all of this can happen. That's when you grasp what is transient. So moods of the mind are transient, and we do still want to, obviously you don't want to just not discern what's helpful and what's not helpful. So for me, to bring mindfulness, and I don't think this works for everybody because there's many reasons people have depression, but for me to bring mindfulness to depression was very helpful. I could notice the quality of it and how it would pull me down and how it would limit things, and then at some point it would shift and lift, and sometimes I would have very blissful, bright, open states, and they would be so wonderful, and then it would, my moods would swing like that. And I remember once speaking with Ajahn Sumedho, who was my teacher in Amaravati in England, and feeling concerned, maybe I'm bipolar, maybe I have a problem because I'm really high and then I'm really depressed. And then he'd known me for some time, and he said, no, you just need to be mindful. Be mindful of going up and be mindful of going down. And that was really helpful because first of all, it took out any worry that I might be there. And I noticed when I really paid attention that when my mind started to get bright, I loved that. I grasped that. I identified with that. I wanted that. And when it started to go down, I didn't like that. I wanted to get away from that. I disliked that. So that pattern of grasping and pushing away is the very crux of the problem. That's what keeps us in endless samsara. Grasping and pushing away. And it happens very subtly. We don't notice we're doing it often. So it can even be around, a mood or a thought or a feeling, these transient things. And then I want that, I don't want that. So that's not to say we shouldn't be discerning, because we should be discerning. Discernment is a wisdom quality. But so we're discerning what is present and how we're responding to it, rather than discerning, oh, that's nice, I want more of that, or that's not nice, I want to get rid of that. So it's a more clear discernment. And also what's beneficial and what's unbeneficial. So sometimes what's beneficial isn't easy and isn't nice on the short term, but the long-term effect is really good. And sometimes what is pleasant on the short term is, not beneficial. And maybe am I saying the same thing? Maybe anyway. Sometimes we, sometimes on the short term you can have pleasure, but on the long term it's not really helpful. Or on the short term it can be really difficult, but on the long term that's actually really helpful. So discerning what is forward leading on the path and what isn't. And part of befriending the mind is getting to know all of these different states of mind, and even different characters, you could say. So now there's this form of therapy, of psychotherapy called IFS, Internal Family Systems. I don't know it well actually, but it's basically recognizing that there are all of these different characters in here, in us, that play different roles. And if we can understand what's going on and sort of like, I guess to some degree, manage who's in control in there, then we find greater freedom. So I only know a tiny bit about it, but I guess what I'm pointing to is that we're not just one fixed thing, one person, but we're made up of many memories and feelings and desires and fears and intentions and history and family, ancestral history. All of this is all here. And then what we do with this matters. So in that chant, this chant we did earlier, this is going through the 4 Brahma Viharas, or the 4 boundless qualities, and the 4th one for upekkhā is about karma. So I am the owner of my karma, heir to my karma, born of my karma, related to my karma, abide supported by my karma. Whatever karma I shall do, for good or for ill, of that I will be the heir. So this is the reflection of equanimity, actually, on karma. So, sometimes we might be struggling with what we've inherited or what we've done in our life, and karma literally is action with intention. So it's what we're doing. So it's not so much what we're receiving, but what we're doing with what is arising now. So the karma is always made in the present, and the result of that karma we will experience at some time, either soon or later. But how we respond to the present matters. How we respond to the present matters. It makes all the difference in the world, actually. So in the Buddha's path, we're developing strengths that help us to meet the moment. So that question earlier about mettā and just how hard it is to take in the suffering of all beings, because there's so much suffering, and there always has been. This is part of the world, and we hear about it all now. So we can have a huge download of all of the suffering of the world by looking at the news for half an hour. And we're not designed, we're not made to take in that much all at once. So we need to develop the good qualities, the strengths of the heart and discernment of the mind. And we have to start where we are. So it's very easy to look at an ideal of, I think as monastics also, it's easy to project onto us that we must be really very, very holy and we do everything right. We're always very calm and polite and we're always very mindful of everything we do. And, the monastic life, it's rigorous actually. It takes you into some difficult places. You can't really escape anything. You have to meet all kinds of challenging conditions as a monastic, internal and external. And that's good, because it's stuff that needs to be worked through and let go of. So we have to start from where we are, wherever that is, whatever we're carrying. We begin from here and meet it with kindness. Kindness and clarity. So the clarity is really important. If there's just kindness, then we don't move on. And if there's just clarity, then it can be a bit cold, a bit harsh. So we bring those together, the kindness and the clarity, like that. And let those qualities work on whatever's here, whatever we're carrying. And as we continue the practice and develop the practice, it's not, I used to think that, if you meditate and if you're practicing the Eightfold Path, after a while you won't, life will get easier, basically. Life will be less challenging. And you'll be with nice people and you won't have to argue, you get along and everything will be in harmony. That's my thing, I like harmony. Of course, life isn't very harmonious, but so I imagined, as you meditate and practice the Eightfold Path, you practice ethics and you're kind and all that, then everything outside gets all nice too. But actually, life goes on, and challenges still arise, and sometimes things get really difficult, But the difference is that you have the room to meet that and to respond to it in a different way. And there's an image in the suttas of salt. You may be familiar with it in regard to karma. That it's like if you have a lump of salt and you put it in a little egg cup, then it's going to be that of water. That water's going to be very, very salty. But if you take that same lump of salt and you put it into a lake, and then you drink from the lake, you may not taste the salt. So it's the same amount of salt, but it's got more room. So it's a little bit like that with the practice. It's like the salt is the karma, the past karma, that we have to, we can't get away from it, whatever things that we've done in the past, that we remember and that we don't remember, but we can make our heart and mind big enough that when it arises, it's just received. It's like, a little bit bad taste, but okay, it's okay. It can be like that, but we need to work on that to make the heart and mind big enough. And as we create a more spacious awareness, we meet all of the obstacles to that. So it sounds nice, and it is nice actually, it's beautiful, to have an awareness that's spacious and open. And in order to get there, sometimes we've got to work through some gnarly stuff. Gnarly? Is that a word you know? Mm-hmm. A bit kind of gristly stuff. Sometimes that's part of getting to a nice, open, clear mind, heart and mind. So we cultivate the wholesome, the Brahma Viharas, the loving kindness, compassion, appreciative joy, and equanimity. and also sati, presence, with everything, ideally. Nothing's outside of the satipatthana, really, of the four establishments of mindfulness. And then, well, my practice is less samadhi oriented. It was more in the early days, but it is less so these days, and maybe it needs to be a bit more, I don't know, but sati, presence, awareness, and dhammavijja, investigation, and virya, staying with it, sustained energy, those are more my go-to in practice. So the awakening factors are more what I work with, and then the samadhi is actually a very important part of the path. For me, it's not central, but it is an important part, because without samadhi, we're still operating on a sort of personal, intellectual level. That's to some degree, not just intellectual, but the samadhi shows us a different reality in some way. So when the mind really, really settles and gets very clear and deep, then our experience of reality is very different to how it is when we're somebody going around doing things. So it gives us a different perspective. It opens, in a way, a greater potential of a human life, but and it's good, it's an important part of the Eightfold Path, but it is only one fold of the Eightfold Path. So sati is my best friend, and the Brahma-viharas are also very, very important for transforming, because even if you do a lot of practice, do long retreat, and you really get somewhere and you really feel that a lot has transformed and the heart's really open and maybe you've had some insight, and still when you get back to your daily life, the old patterns, the old buttons are still there, and the challenges and all that stuff, and then it all starts to get cluttered again. So we need to keep on practicing. We need to keep on cultivating, developing, and letting go. And in the Mettā Sutta, the Buddha describes this quality of metta, of unconditional friendliness, unconditional love for all, or benevolence for all beings. And then he says, whether standing or walking, seated or laying down, when you're not drowsy, when the mind's awake, one should sustain this recollection. So you should sustain the recollection of metta for all beings, whether sitting, standing, walking, or lying down. This is said to be the sublime abiding. So I think this is really important and often overlooked. Often people do like a little bit of metta, 5 minutes of metta at the end, or maybe once in a while do a bit of metta, or maybe not do metta at all because they don't like metta. I always feel bad doing metta or something like this. But the Buddha's saying, actually we need to sustain this quality, sustain our awareness of kindness for all beings. And another line in that sutta, me tancha sambalo kasmin, metta or benevolence for all the world, for the whole world, everything, everyone. So the Buddha is saying this is what is to be cultivated, to come to a place where we can have metta for all beings at all times. So probably we're not quite there yet, but it's an aspiration and a potential. And that's like that little poem I read, I quoted earlier. Full of trust you left home and soon learned to walk the path, making yourself a friend to everyone and making everyone a friend. When the whole world is your friend, fear can find no place to call home. And that's true about metta. When there's metta, there's no room for fear. Or if there's fear, you can bring metta to the fear. And when you make the mind your friend, you'll know what trust really means. You can trust your mind. You know your mind really deeply and well, so you don't have to be afraid that it's going to pull you in some treacherous territory. So when you make the mind your friend, you'll know what trust really means. Listen, I have followed this path of friendship to its end, and I know with absolute certainty it will lead you home. So home being an abiding in presence. So this is the sort of the guiding star. So what I'm pointing to is like a guiding stars. And it's easy to hear that and think, oh, I'm so far from there, I just can't even begin. But it's like a guiding star. It's like pointing the direction. I want to go in that direction. I don't want to just keep muddling around. I don't want to keep muddling around, in the city streets or in the forest, or not knowing where I'm going around in circles. And I want to follow that direction that the Buddha pointed to, because it's beautiful and liberating and not easy, and but worth it. And I also like to reflect on how the Buddha, the Buddha speaks about Mara. People know about Mara? So it's like a personification of everything that tries to pull you off track, really. And it always amazes me that throughout the Buddha's life, the Buddha, fully awakened, you can't get more enlightened than the Buddha. That's like as awake as you can be. The Buddha is hassled by Mara. Mara comes to the Buddha and says, tries to make him end his life a bit earlier, or make him not teach, or it tries all of these different ways to sort of undermine the Buddha passing on this beautiful teaching. And the Buddha isn't afraid of Mara, and he doesn't despise Mara. He just says, I know you, Mara. That's it. He just says, I know you, Mara. And then Mara, knowing that he can't get his way with the Buddha, disappears. So this is also what we need to learn, is when Mara comes, which it will. If he comes to the Buddha, it's going to come to us. So you can think of it as a personified, or just those thoughts in the mind. It's just those little thoughts or big thoughts that say, they might, for some people they say, you are so wonderful. I know I have a friend who has those kind of thoughts, but knows them. You're really the best. You're better than everybody else. So you might have those kind of thoughts, or it might be, you might as well just give up, really, because you're not going to get anywhere with this practice. It might be thoughts like that, or it might just be tempting thoughts like, "Oh, okay, I was going to meditate, but I think I'm just going to go and do that other interesting thing instead." It can be like that. I think, phone is a good Mara. Not often, can be. Mara can have a lot of access, let's say, through the phone. It doesn't have to be, but can. So getting to know Mara and not being afraid of Mara, but just being able to see, like, I know you. So shame is an interesting one. Shame is such an unpleasant experience. We do everything we can to avoid feeling shame, and then we feel shame, and then we try and hide it, and then we feel ashamed about feeling shame. And what is it like just to feel it? Just to allow yourself to feel shame. From not like fall into a swamp of shame or anything like that, but just for a minute. I don't mean right now, but it's actually helpful to be able to just feel what it feels like. I feel it goes through my body, it kind of goes all the way through, and it's unpleasant, and then it passes. It's like, oh, then it's not scary anymore. Then it doesn't have so much power. So learning to open to things as they are, and have the strength of awareness to not get pulled in it's a practice, and then there'll be some things that maybe you'll be strong in, and some things that are a bit more difficult. Weak areas and strong areas, and so not to focus only on the weak areas, but to appreciate the strong, appreciate the good. The Buddha really encourages us to appreciate the good in ourselves. He directly says that in our not-self, in this process that we call me, to appreciate the good, appreciate the virtue, appreciate the generosity, appreciate the good qualities, because that gives us, it fills us with what is good. So it's it's just for us to, it's all there, it's all kind of mapped out, the path. And the practices are, they take some, they're practices, they take some training and effort, but they're not that hard. The hardest thing is remembering, because we forget 1,000 times a day. So remembering is the hardest thing. But every time we remember, that's a good moment. So it may be that you're conditioned to, when you remember, you chastise yourself for having forgotten in the first place. So if we do that, if you're like, no, you forgot, you weren't mindful, then being mindful becomes sort of a bit of a drag. It's that thing you're supposed to do. It becomes sort of a duty, rather than, oh, I forgot, and here I am again, I'm remembering, I'm back. And when you're really present, things get kind of bright and interesting. Even the most ordinary things get interesting, like the breath, which we overlook all the time. When you're really present with the breath, it reveals all the teachings of the Buddha. She said it's been 20 years. She told me it's been 20 years like that. So, but yeah, on the breath, when you're really with the breath, you find all the teachings of the Buddha are there. Teachings on impermanence, on not self, on dukkha, on expansion and contraction, increase and letting go. So it's all there. It's all there on the breath. But you can only find those teachings on the breath when you pay careful attention. So I offer that as an encouragement. And questions about it? So open up to questions. I want to give you that. So yeah, I think I'd just like to see if there's anything anyone would like to bring in or ask at this point.
Something. I don't know if I can explain it clearly, but how could you explain how to investigate? Because when I investigate and I feel my body, it's okay, and then I feel where it is, and okay, and then it's okay. Sometimes it goes to mind, and then I start thinking, yes. And then I totally get confused.
Right.
So,
thank you, that's a very good point. And in a way you're sort of answering the question. So the question is about how to investigate and when you investigate in the body, that works. But sometimes you go to the mind and then it gets confusing. So in a way the answer is right there in your question, because when you're in the body and you're investigating what's going on, you're directly experiencing what's happening, and then that's telling you something. And then when we go back into the mind, into thought, so when we're investigating on the level of thought, there is some value to that in certain things, but not so much in meditation. So if we're using thought during meditation, it's a bit limiting. And then we're thinking about something which is sort of one step away from the actual experience. So when you're investigating in the body, you're knowing directly what's happening here and now. But you can also know what's happening in the mind without getting pulled into the mind. You just need enough awareness, sati, enough presence. And just to say with sati, in the beginning, before we start to practice, there's probably some mindfulness somewhere. We've developed certain mindfulness through the day, but it's not really maybe samma sati. It's not a sati that's going to lead us along on the path. We maybe kind of be mindful while we're, I don't know, gardening or whatever. And that's okay, but it's without the sort of the context. It's not really furthering. So in the beginning, it's like our experience and the knowing of the experience are all just one thing. They're all just meshed together, and so we're caught up in everything. So there's no gap between what we experience and how we respond to that. And then as we practice, there starts to be a bit more of a gap between what we experience, what's known, and what's like the object, the sensation, let's say, and what's knowing the sensation. There starts to be a bit more of a gap. And the way I learned in the early days of my practice, we used to talk about the watcher, which I wouldn't use that term now, but we talk about the watcher or the knower and what is known. And that's really helpful, actually, at a certain stage, because then you can separate out what's knowing and what's being known. So in the beginning you can't separate them, but then as you practice you can see the difference. So knowing knows restlessness, or knows depression, or knows confusion, or whatever. So then knowing knows that, and the knowing isn't confused, it isn't afraid, it's not depressed, and so on. It's just knowing. And so it can be really helpful to really strengthen that, and so that you get a very strong ability to know what is going on, also in the mind, without getting pulled into it. And it does have this sort of duality to it. It's this sort of little bit. It's almost like one part of you is watching, and another part is being watched. It can be like that, which is good for a while, but you can't stay. Don't stay there forever. I mean, it can be even for a year or two. It's okay to do that, but at some point, then you need to bring those. Once your awareness is established and strong, then you don't need to keep it away from what is known. Then you can bring it right back into the heart of what is known. But you're present, and you're not, and the presence doesn't get pulled into what's happening. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So and it's like it's a development through our practice, but it can also change day to day to some degree. There might be some days where your awareness is just more strong and clear, and other days where you just can't quite manage that, and so you get pulled in more, and so then you just know, I'm not really able to, I can't do that right now. So then you just be a little bit more mindful, just a little bit more careful. So yeah. Okay.
Can I say something about
mettā?
Yes. My mettā practice. Oh, don't say yes, so you haven't heard my...
Well, you can anyway.
I've been telling myself a story for years that I hate mettā and that I can't do it. Mm-hmm. And I go to various retreats and I talk to the teachers, and the answer that I get is either, well, stop doing it, or I'm summarising it, or else, well, keep doing it.
Keep at it. Keep banging away.
And it's your path, you keep at it, and you'll get there. And I do a lot of retreats, day retreats, long retreats, and it almost always comes up. So
I hope so.
There's quite a lot of suffering for me around mettā, but that practice there, I thought, okay, I'm not sending it to anybody. I can't send it to anybody. I can't even send it to myself.
That's right.
Maybe just feel the light or the warmth, and then I thought, okay, there's a bit of blockage here probably in my heart. So just let the light, warmth, millimeter permeate. And I thought, okay, that wasn't too painful, that mettā practice wasn't too painful. But what I did then, which really helped, but possibly not a good idea, but I think there's quite a lot of anxiety. So I said, everything is okay. Everything is okay. Everything is okay. And I thought, well, that could be my practice. Even though everything is okay, well, maybe everything isn't okay in the world or in my life, but everything is okay right now, on this chair, in this room, here.
Yes.
So I thought, is that a little way in? And maybe, who was I talking to? Ajahn Sumedho. And I said, if I just do this for 10 years, and then I'm to send it to somebody else for the next 10 years, and then the final 10 years of my life, maybe I might possibly be able to send it out. But it's like, I don't hear people talking about how difficult mettā is, but it's really painful for me, really hard to do.
Thank you. You know, I hear it a lot, actually, and people saying, I hate mettā. You're not the first person I've heard say it, so no, I hear it quite a bit. And actually what you're describing is a little bit different to what often I hear people that they're just more in their head, so they're not finding it. But what you're describing is actually painful. It's painful in the heart, and that was my experience also in the beginning. That when I tried to do mettā practice, and I looked at my heart, it was like, ooh, there's this little beaten up leathery thing in there that there's no way that could send out loving kindness for anyone, you know, and certainly not for myself. And so I like to think of them, I mean, like the Buddha gives this mettā practice similar to what I was describing earlier, the guidance, and then I feel like it's sort of open to creativity, because the most important thing is that the quality of mettā arises somehow in the heart, which it did for you there, and how you get there doesn't matter too much, actually. But it's and like when you said about, there's a bit of a blockage there, it's a bit painful, bringing mettā to that, that's perfect. That's exactly what needs to happen. Because first of all, we have to heal what's here. And I think one of the things that can be really hard is that people have been through all kinds of difficulties, you know, traumas and challenges, and then it's like, okay, now pump out mettā, loving kindness for all beings in all directions, and you just can't do it. The heart can't do it. It's almost cruel, actually, to ask that heart to do that. And so for myself, I spent a year you've got the 10-year thing, I spent a year just mettā for this heart that was unable to have anything good going on, you know, much. I mean, it's definitely it couldn't receive mettā in the beginning, let alone let it out. And so I would just imagine mettā bathing that little leathery heart, just bathe, without any pressure, no expectation, just very nice. And then after, gradually it started to open, trust, and gradually healing. And after a year, it sort of felt, from being very kind of dark and leathery, it was kind of pink and like fresh and alive. It was like, maybe now I can send some out to other people. So I think that's a good way to do it, and that it can be a pressure. You're supposed to have loving kindness for all beings, so come on, you know, and then you're just stuck, because you're trying to give away something you don't have yet, and you can't do that. So to take the time you need to heal those blockages and to generate that light, and that gently, in the way that you just did, with no time scale on it, you know, just each time you're just taking care, and it's transformative. This is beautiful.
I have to trust that. I have to trust that, you know, I have to trust it. Yes.
Well, you've seen a little bit today, so
yeah.
It wasn't bad, you know, and it was a little bit painful, but then you, instead of kind of, come on, you just were like, it's a bit painful, let's be kind to them. Yeah, so it's good. What is it? I'm not sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I sometimes have the same problem, but I do it different with all the retreats. I go work in the kitchen. And so you do kind of stuff. And
keep busy.
At the end of the day, everyone is with a big smile. And at the end of the retreat, I'm happy. And so it's like...
So when you're in the kitchen, what's happening there? Are you just cooking it? Are you
we're just preparing stuff and you're very diligent doing stuff because you want to also make people happy.
There you go. So you've got some generosity going on, yeah.
Retreats where the food is terrible, you notice it. So, and then you see all the time happy faces.
So
and that makes you happy too.
Yeah, that's nice. That's nice, yeah. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, you're finding a way to generate wholesome qualities, really. That's what you're doing, yeah. And also, I would like to, I think that's really great that you do, and maybe explore this, like a way that's heart related as well. I mean, directly, just explore it. But maybe your way is fine. But it is good to have access to that quality that isn't dependent on particular conditions. Yes.
I have a question about preferences. I practice already for some time, and also I did some Zen. And then there's some text I don't remember from him, but it is in short what I remember, that if you don't have any preferences, you're there, sort of. And you were talking also about the pulling, pushing. So I noticed that it is a bit ingrained in me that I practice like that during the day. So I notice if I like something or I'm sort of Facebooking myself. I notice there is something happening but I don't know if it is real equanimity or false equanimity. Am I numbing myself, or is it really working? But it works for me. I'm quite, I call myself a jungle person.
A what?
Jungle person, like Tarzan.
Okay,
so
you dive into things.
I'm not very equanimous
Yes.
at all,
Yes.
which I sort of also think it is okay as long as I don't act on it. And I notice it works so a bit, like when my bread is falling on the ground with the texture like that. I say to myself, I don't like that. And it works, but perhaps it's foolish. But you understand?
Why would it be foolish to say that? You're saying, I don't like that, so you're acknowledging, I don't like that. But you're not like having a tantrum, you're just acknowledging, I don't like that.
Exactly.
That sounds okay, sounds good.
Oh, that's okay then.
Yeah, I mean, it's just real, isn't it?
It really works. Oh, I like that. Oh, I don't like that. It really works. You said something about in your early days. Perhaps you had some like highs and lows. I had a lot of lows when I was young, and that was about identification.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I noticed by just calling it out, it gets a bit hilarious because I zoom out immediately. And I'm just checking because I don't have a teacher right now. So.
I mean, I think that zooming out, because there's different ways of zooming out, but what I'm hearing, what I think you're saying is, you zoom out so you're not personally caught up in it. You're just seeing it. Oh yeah, there's that. Because there's a zooming out that's more dissociative, which I don't think you're talking about.
Okay. Yeah.
But that's when you don't. That's not good. That's not. You need to learn to come back. But there's another kind of zooming out that's just no. It's like I was describing before about the sati, where you're not caught up, where you see something and then you just like give it a bit of distance, and then you're like, oh,
yes,
look at that. There it is. like it, don't like it, you know. But then that's different to like, I don't like it, pop, I'm just going to go somewhere else, and then that's more like a dissociative thing, which I don't think you're speaking about.
No.
So then that's fine, that's good.
So at the end, those preferences disappear.
Right.
Do you know anything about
I mean, I'm still working on it, you know. What I know is, what comes to mind actually is that from the teachings, some of the descriptions of the Buddha in the suttas, where it said that he would, you know, because he was a mendicant, so he relied on people for his meal every day, and sometimes, you know, there was very poor people in some areas where he was walking, and sometimes he had kings and, you know, incredible chefs cooking and all that stuff, depending on who was offering the meal. You know. And so it's said that he could appreciate the pleasant experience of eating good food without any desire. So there's still an experience. It's not like his all food's the same, no flavour, you know. It's like some of it is really delicious, and then he could appreciate that, but there's no craving. And then it'll probably also with very simple food he could notice like very simple, but there's no disappointment or anything, it's just knowing. So it sounds to me that what you're doing is leading in that direction.
Good to know.
Yeah. And then life will test you also, probably, if you're really genuine about it. So.
Sometimes there is no zooming out. Yeah.
And then, like I said before, you know, at some point, when your awareness gets strong, you don't need to zoom out anymore. You can stay right in the middle of it, and you can just know it as it is. Oh, it's like this. Oh, it's pushing me in that direction. Okay, I'm not going there. So that's the next stage. It's coming back into the centre of it. When it's strong enough, when the sati is strong enough. Okay. So let's do a little bit more standing meditation, just for a few minutes. For those who are able, if you want to sit, that's also okay. We can stretch our legs a little bit. Feeling the weight of your body on the floor, your feet in contact with the floor or the mat. Just notice the alignment of your body. So when the body's aligned, you don't have to work too hard to stand up. If you're leaning forward, it's a lot of work for the base of the spine to hold everything up. If you're leaning back, it's a lot of work on the legs. So you want to find that place, and you can just roll a little bit if you wish to, just to find that place of balance. Where the feet are where the weight is evenly distributed on the soles of your feet. And as we stand, I'd just like to invite to bring to your heart that, see whether you can find again that quality of mettā or appreciative joy. So I think I'm going to forget your name, but I think what you were speaking about with the cooking is more appreciative joy, which is another important quality. Muditā. Taking in the blessing of this moment, to be in this place, good people, sense of safety, to be well enough to be here, to have the blessing and good fortune to hear the Dhamma in your life, if you're up for it, please focus on your heart center and just breathing in the metta that's been generated for the benefit of all beings. Taking in the metta and sending out, if you're ready to send out, if not, just letting it glow there in your heart. So if you want to continue standing, you can carry on standing. If you like to sit, you sit down. Just settling into the present experience, body and breath. Just noticing if any of the hindrances are present. And there's a very sweet gift that the Buddha gave us. That he doesn't only encourage us to notice the hindrances that are present, but he also encourages us to notice those that are absent. So by their very nature, they can't all be present at once. So even if you've got a lot of greed and restlessness, we don't have sattva. So it's very kind to guide us to see what is good. So just noticing what might be present now, maybe no hindrances, or maybe one or two, or sometimes three might be present. They're not fixed, they're not who and what we are, they're just qualities that arise and pass away. And once you know the territory that you're in right now, territory of mind, coming back to the body breathing. If there's dullness, then pay particular attention to the in-breath, brightening. If there's restlessness, then pay particular attention to the out-breath, calming. If the mind is more stable, then just be aware of the in-breath and the out-breath. So we can regulate in this way. So before we end, I'd just like to encourage everyone to take in the goodness of your practice over this day and life, and just to take a moment to take it in and not just think about it, but let your heart receive the goodness of your practice. And then we can share any blessings, any good energy, any strength of our practice over this day, and through of meditation and just generosity, maybe many things today. May that be a benefit to you, to each of us, and to all beings. May all beings realize their true nature. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings be free.